Please join the Budget 2009 campaign to save the National Accord. Saving the National Accord will save Kenya for my generation and many generations to come. Objective 1. Rationalizing the size of the central government. What can you do? You can advocate and educate Kenyans on the need to reduce the size of the government of Kenya. To enact a law pursuant to Section 16 of the Constitution of Kenya to cap the number of cabinet ministries. There are far too many ministries, and there is need for integrity criteria for public service. The Grand Coalition government was established after the National Accord. It is the largest and most expensive cabinet in Kenya's history. The economic situation requires the government of Kenya to immediately demonstrate austerity measures, including the reduction of the number of ministries to a reasonable number. At independence, there were 13 ministries. Today, there are 43. Kenyans cannot afford to maintain a bloated cabinet of 93 ministers and assistant ministers. Many of the 43 ministries have no developmental added value and are mere sinecure positions for the President and Prime Minister to fill. Call to action. Join the Partnership for Change campaign for a lean, clean, and efficient cabinet, and ask all Kenyans to campaign for a lean, clean cabinet, creating effective demand for reduction of the number of cabinet ministers. Campaign for Parliament to move to cap the number of ministries as per Section 16 of the Constitution of Kenya to 13, and thus reduce recurrent expenditure resulting from a bloated cabinet. Objective 2. Rationalizing the national budget. What can you do? You can advocate and educate Kenyans on the need to reduce the recurrent expenditure of government and to set ceilings on recurrent expenditure with appropriate sanctions for public officers responsible for exceeding such ceilings. The need to monitor public expenditure at national level and to identify waste and corruption for the purposes of rationalizing the national budget. And you can educate Kenyans on the need for an official policy requiring that at least 60% of the national budget shall be allocated to development purposes and expenditure. Government must adopt austerity measures to ensure that no money is wasted and that all national financial resources are conserved for use in elevating the plight of tens of millions who live in poverty. One way of tightening the government's belt is to sieve through the budget for waste and extravagance. Parliament can cut government expenditure for foreign travel, fuel, utilities such as electricity and water, purchase and maintenance of motor vehicles, rent by the government of premises, hospitality expenses, and taxation waivers and privileges of elected officials. All wasteful expenditure must be removed from the national budget estimates. We believe the estimates must reflect 60% in development expenditure and 40% in recurrent expenditure if the budget is to meet the current needs of the Kenyan people. Any less will only make Kenyans' lives worse, unbearable, and totally without dignity in the coming year. Call to action. Join the Partnership for Change campaign for the budget in 2009 to reflect 60% in development expenditure and 40% in recurrent expenditure, and ask all Kenyans to campaign for government to remove unnecessary or wasteful expenditure from the recurrent budget. Campaign for Parliament to disapprove wasteful expenditure proposals by the Government of Kenya. Parliament should reduce exaggerated or inappropriate budget estimates if government fails to do so. Campaign for Parliament to restore the system of checks and balances and parliamentary oversight of the Kenyan national budget. Campaign for government and Parliament to remove bogus debts from the Kenyan national budget. Campaign for reversing of the recurrent to development expenditure ratio in the Kenyan national budget. Kenyans want it to be 60-40. Development Recurrent, from June this year, 2009. Campaign for proper management of the public finances by every Member of Parliament and all public officers. Campaign for government to fulfill its fiduciary duty to ensure that there is proper management of our resources. Objective 3. Dealing with corrupt debt. What can you do? You can advocate and educate Kenyans on the need for full accountability and transparency in the External Public Debt Register, which records all debts incurred by the Government of Kenya. You can advocate and educate Kenyans on the position that transparency requires Kenyans to know what they owe, to whom they owe, and what purpose they have a debt. You can advocate and educate Kenyans that there should be no further contracting of international debts unless and until the Government of Kenya accounts the people of Kenya through Parliament by tabling the complete list of loans and debt registers. For the period 1963 to date for public scrutiny, you can advocate and educate Kenyans on the need to amend the law so that it is illegal for the government to borrow without prior parliamentary approval and full debate on the merits. Kenya's external debt stands at 1 trillion shillings, and much of this debt is corrupt and odious. The Government of Kenya must become accountable and transparent to the public in the borrowing and implementation of the funds it borrows on behalf of the public. There is need to have corrupt loans on the Kenya External Public Debt Registers purged immediately so that Kenya tax money is not being paid for bogus debts abroad. Such corrupt loans are easy to spot, and we could start with the Anglo-Leeson debts and the Kenren fertilizer factory loans. The money saved would then be committed to development expenditure. Kenyans would like to seek comprehensive debt relief where more money could be mobilized for development. If the international community were to adopt a policy to immediately forgive proven corruption-related debt, there is need to petition the international community for 100% cancellation of all external debt that we can prove to be corrupt, and which are owed to entities in their jurisdictions. Kenyans can assist this campaign by identifying externally funded projects that were never completed or were non-existent. The Partnership for Change will campaign for international assistance for support for the immediate cessation of repayment of corrupt external debt and enforcement of law towards this end in their countries. The campaign will call for the Government of Kenya to undertake to redirect money saved towards the development budget. This policy would be consistent with commitments to Kenya under the Millennium Development Goals. Call to action. Join the Partnership for Change campaign to mobilize public support so that the Government of Kenya becomes accountable and transparent in the borrowing and implementation of the funds it borrows to the public, and campaign on the need to have corrupt loans on the Kenya External Public Debt Register purged, and ask all Kenyans to campaign for an independent audit of the External Public Debt Register, whose results should be tabled in the National Assembly. Campaign for corrupt loans on the Kenya External Public Debt Register to be purged immediately. Campaign for comprehensive debt relief by requesting the international community to adopt a policy to immediately forgive proven corruption-related debt. Campaign for the immediate retirement in the public interest of the Permanent Secretary, Treasury, and the Head of Debt Management, and immediate replacement of the 2 persons with Kenyans with appropriate credentials. Campaign to pressure the Government of Kenya to request mutual legal assistance for international asset recovery and to take action to seize proceeds of corruption in Kenya. Call to action. Join the Budget 2009 campaign to save Agenda 4 of the National Accord. The Partnership for Change seeks support for all citizens of the Republic of Kenya and friends of the citizens of Kenya to join this national campaign. Activities you can easily accomplish to support this campaign. Send formal statements and letters to concerned officials, such as your Member of Parliament and the Minister for Finance. Organize citizen meetings to discuss this issue. Organize individual, group, and mass petitions. Organize and participate in non-violent protest and action. Make that change with the Partnership for Change. You and I can make that difference.
To those who cling to power through corruption and deceit and the silencing of dissent, know that you are on the wrong side of history, but that we will extend a hand if you are willing to unclench your fist. Unclench your fist. To the people of poor nations, we pledge to work alongside you to make your farms flourish and let clean waters flow, to nourish starved bodies and feed hungry minds.